back again with another episode of Light Skin. Welcome. As you can see, before I introduce our guests, we in a new space and look good in here. Cool. Shout out to Joe McCord for letting us use the garage.
Joe.
Yeah, wherever he at, who knows? We took over the garage anyway. But we have Dan the Man Fanning in the building with us today. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah. We I see Dan all the time at different outings, Chamber of Commerce stuff, downtown Duluth, at the gym, 5 a.m., getting after it. Yeah. I said, why don't we just have you on the pod? You know? So haven't got to talk a lot, but
I look forward to it.
This is the introduction. So once again, I'm Pez.
Kentrell.
And like I said, this is Dan. So we jump into it. So start from the beginning. Baby Dan, you know, where were you born? You know, tell us about just growing up a little bit.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. This is fun, so I appreciate the opportunity. I was born just outside Chicago, so I was product of a single mom who raised me and my brother by herself, and we moved around quite a bit within the city and then kind of southwest suburbs of the city, and we did that till I was about 13, 14 years old. And then we moved from the city to a really small town in north central Wisconsin called Tomahawk. So kind of got the best of both worlds, where we kind of had the city life, but then you had a very much kind of a small town country life. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of what I love about Duluth, is it's a little bit of everything. You know, it's big enough to have stuff to do, but still kind of has that small town feel. So that's what's so long story short, I mean, that's kind of my background. We grew up really poor. Just a good single mom who was phenomenal and is my hero and all those things. But at the same time, like you just appreciate things differently when you didn't have much growing up. And we had everything we needed, but just we were raised in a prime ridden trailer park just outside Chicago, and just kind of saw that life. I knew that's not what I wanted. Obviously, that's certainly not what my mom wanted. So that's why she moved us up to Wisconsin, just to kind of get us out of that situation. And we honestly loved everywhere I've ever lived. I've lived a lot of different places, but that was really kind of my upbringing. And again, as a kid, you don't know what you don't have. So exactly. I was always a happy kid. I had everything.
Back and say, damn, we really have this?
Right. But now that I got kids of my own, you look back and say, damn, how the hell did my mom do that? Right. I mean, I think a lot of us think that way. It's lucky. So,
How many how many siblings did you have growing up, and where are you in that?
Well, that's a whole Jerry Springer story.
Okay.
Right? I don't know how much time you have.
Yeah, well, we locked in.
So I was raised with just my mom and my brother Willie, right? So
Okay.
that was my life until I was about 17, 18 years old. We moved up to Wisconsin. And then I don't know how much you want to get into this, but the guy who I thought was my father, I had no real relationship with him. You know, and this is a relatively common story, but I just raised by a single mom who was phenomenal. The guy who I always thought was my father was my brother's father. I just assumed he was my father. I didn't know him really well, and he let me know that he kind of through back channels let me know he wasn't my dad, and I didn't care because I didn't know much about the guy either. But then it kind of had that classic. Sat down with my mom and said, "Who's my dad?" Right? So that kind of changed some things. So I found out who my father was, and it wasn't his fault or obviously my fault, but we didn't know each other. He had lived in the East Coast and came to Chicago for some work, and they started dating, my mom and dad, and then he got shipped back to the East Coast, and a couple of weeks later, my mom started feeling some stomach pains, and that's where I came from.
Ain't that time of the month, is it?
Yeah, exactly right. So that was for whatever reason, she decided not to tell him, so it was a surprise to both of us when I was about 18 years old, a senior in high school.
Oh, wow.
And fortunate that I got to know him, and that's what's complicated about your question. So then he went on and got married and had had 3 other children. Yeah. So I really have kind of the main brother, my brother William, but then I also have some additional stepbrothers and sisters as well.
So what age? And I just want to make sure I get it right. What age did you get to meet your dad at 18, or that's 18. When you found out?
No, 18 years old. Yeah, I was 18, senior in high school, and I was an athlete. And I know you guys were talking about that a couple episodes ago, where basketball was a huge part of my life. So, looking back now in my mid 40s, that's a big significant thing. At the time, I kind of thought, I was like, that's cool. I got a game tomorrow, and then just go out with life, right? Exactly.
And then as teenagers and kids, we find ourselves feeling like basketball and all that other shit is just our world.
Right.
Yeah, so we revolve ourselves around that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a safe space.
It's a distraction from life, right?
Well,
exactly. And it's motivation. Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
And you got to go find those.
Yeah. So I mean, it's in some ways, it's not to get too into the weeds, but it's a lot of people will ask, well, are you mad at your mom? Hell no. Things work out like they're supposed to work out. So I had a great, my mom was the best person on the planet as far as I'm concerned, right? So, just fortunate to have that, but also, you know, to answer your question, like it's my background, and I'm proud of that. I'm not ashamed of that because it makes you kind of, and I know you guys have talked about this too. I've heard it drives to who you are and what you care most about.
Definitely.
I see the work that you guys do, and it's awesome work, and appreciative of that. And it's just that's how the community. That's how we keep making progress. So it's
So, are you the youngest, oldest with your brother?
Yeah, so my brother's 2.5 years older than me.
Okay.
And then of course my father's other children are a little bit younger. So it's but
What's your brother doing now? Where is
he
he?
lives in Ohio, just outside Youngstown, Ohio.
Okay.
He works for like an aviation company. He does all their purchasing. So we
Very
get
cool.
together a couple times a year, and you know, it's all good.
So from Wisconsin, all right. So Tomahawk, go back. So if I remember, and maybe I'm wrong, but Tomahawk is that where Long Lake is, where they have the Boy Scouts camp?
There is a Boy Scout.
That's
Yeah,
what I thought.
wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's good. A lot
So,
of people don't know that.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in Lake Nebaga, man.
Okay,
Got a
yeah.
spot out there and everything. And so my buddy's son went to Tomahawk a couple times. So we used to take the boat out on Long Lake.
Yeah.
It's long as hell, like for real.
Yeah.
But it's a cool ass area, like some dope little bars. They got this crazy bakery out there we used to go to.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. So you grew up out there. There's really nothing out there.
Not
honestly.
a lot, but great community. Honestly, it's a great community.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I'd want to live there now, but at the same time, like I understand what people do. It's a great lifestyle. I'm honestly I feel fortunate that that's where I went to school.
Yeah.
They embraced me as kind of an outsider and took care of me and my brother, and it's where I worked. That's where I wound up graduating high school, and then that brought me to the Twin Ports because first in my family go to college, and I didn't know.
Did you go to UMD?
Yeah, well, I started at UW Superior.
Oh, okay.
Great school.
Did you play basketball?
Well, intramurals. I wasn't that good.
Yeah, Dan is still dunk on y'all. So don't get the wrong idea.
No, but it was, honestly, it was graduating high school. No one in my family that I know that had gone to college, so I had no idea what that was about. So honestly, was looking for kind of a smaller, most affordable school. And then as soon as I went to UW Superior just to tour it, and that would have been '97. Just kind of instantly fell in love with the school, and then I looked over the bridge and I saw the lights, and I said, "What the hell's that?"
Yeah,
I've never even heard of Duluth before. Honestly, no, never heard of Duluth before.
Okay.
And that's kind of honest. Like I know you guys have talked about too. You just kind of you're drawn to it, the lake and the city and all that stuff too. So that's. I mean, I've come and gone a few times, but that's kind of what brought me to the Twin Ports originally.
Okay. So good.
No, I wanted to ask when you got here, because I also asked Aaron this. What was the temperature like in the city, and what was the temperature like in the city as far as Wisconsin compared to Wisconsin and compared to Chicago as well?
Every place I went, I got colder, right? So, I remember the first time I toured. I was a senior in high school. Just toured UW Superior. It was a nice day, and then I wound up coming back to do my paperwork, and it was pretty freaking cold, right? So you start having second thoughts and stuff. But I'm glad that everything worked out like it was supposed to. It was a great place to go to school, and I started and ended there. I went to a couple things in between we might have talked about, but. After 9/11, my life changed, and I joined the military and all that stuff too. But but it's where I started and ended my undergraduate degree, and then I wanted to do my graduate program at UMD.
Yeah. So, what branch of the military were?
It was Army.
Okay.
So,
what was your job?
I was 88 Mike, which is transportation. So I primarily drove trucks, but of course, once you get overseas, you do whatever the hell you're told, right? Right. So it's again, when things worked out like they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. And man, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
So, like you said, so you moved back and forth with the military.
Yep.
Basically, you moved around. So, what brought you back to Duluth, and then what kept you here? You know?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I lived, going back to my dad's story real quick. Like I moved out to New York for a while. My dad lives in New York.
Okay.
That's where he lived. That's where he was a cop for many, many years, and just retired a few years ago. So I spent some time in New York. When I was in the military, I spent some time in Georgia, Texas, and been a lot of different places. But honestly, what kept bringing me back, well, who eventually became my wife, Melissa, was the biggest reason why. Right? So love. But honestly, it sounds
Melissa.
Right. Exactly.
Rest in peace.
That's the honest answer. Is the woman I love. But at the same time, like, and I know you guys have said this too, but like there is something about this community. And for work, I'd lived down in the cities a couple of times, and I still go down there a lot. And like how many of us, we've had ample opportunity to go down there. And there's always that draw, but at the same time, like there's always a bigger draw to come back to Duluth.
Definitely,
and especially when we've had kids, and there's nowhere on the planet I'd rather raise our children than Duluth right now. And I mean that sincerely. I've been very fortunate. I've loved everywhere I've ever lived. But as far as thinking about where I want my kids to be raised, and we've already got one out of high school, one's a senior this year, and then I've got a young son who's just turned 7. So just we've been so freaking lucky, and I really appreciate the conversation you had with Superintendent Mangus. And you could just tell he's committed to keeping those schools, this public school, so great, and that's a big deal to me. So to answer your question, it was really just there was something about this community. And this goes back to the mid to late '90s when I first came here. It's there's pros and cons of all places, but there's always a draw here because I love this community. I saw, while it was a great community, I've always seen even more potential than what I think that we have now. But it just feels like that's always where I wanted to be.
Yeah, and it's wild because and we jump into this, but kind of seeing where you are now, like you can see it from kind of top down a little bit, and where we are, we're seeing it from bottom up. And just to meet and see how do we help people get integrated into Duluth. Because, like I'm from the East Coast.
Yeah, it's not easy, right?
Yeah, and Trail, he grew up in St. Paul and stuff.
Right,
and being up here, people ask me all the time, what got you in Duluth? I was like, I still be trying to figure it out.
Right.
But what keep me here really is like the community piece because you got old school Duluth for sure. We in Gary right now. So you got the Gary and then you got the far east Duluth and then you got just Central Hillside that's so mixed. I mean, people from Chicago and Milwaukee and Gary and Indiana cities. I mean, so this is the 3 different parts of Duluth. They their own little worlds for real. And there's work to be done in each of those sections.
For sure.
And I think, like you said, that potential that you can see here in Duluth is really keep you here because you're like, look, I got a hand in some of what's going on. Right. Like, where is we about to take this to?
That's right.
And I know a lot of people have been trying to do it for years, and, shout out to people that I hear the story all the time when people say they used to have the last person turn the lights off.
That's right.
But now it's like, damn, did they ever think that Duluth would be where it is right now? Yeah, we still got a lot of work to do, but shit, they came a long way from even that point.
No, well said. Exactly right.
Yeah,
and that's it. And I think you hit it on the head where it's just like, as a nobody schmuck that moved here in the 90s, like I felt like I could have an impact here somehow, and it feels like you guys are doing the same thing, and that's awesome. It feels like that's the size of the community, but I also feel like it's kind of the heart of the community where you really do need every corner of the community to be successful. Otherwise it doesn't work. And for too long that wasn't the case. We all know that. And I think, candidly, we're all examples of that, for better or for worse. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But sometimes you need that outside perspective as well for a variety of reasons. But you also need to kind of know what's worked in other places and hasn't worked in other places. And, I think probably for too long, candidly, Duluth has kind of been a little bit of a hard place for outsiders like us to come in and be welcomed. And I'm not saying it's perfect now, but I think it's certainly better than it was when I first moved here in the 90s.
Well, I think as someone that's just been here, I feel like half my life, I feel like a lot of it is some people in Duluth wanting it to stay exactly how it's always been. Like, people coming through, like you guys, want to change and change for the better, in my opinion. And yes, friction at this, but at the same time, I feel like we usually come to a medium ground as far as something that the older people can compromise a little bit with, and but they'll still allow it to grow into what I feel like Duluth is turning into. Right?
And when they know you invested, I think that's anywhere because even if I was still in New Jersey in the hood that I grew up in, if people come in, I'm like, what is you doing here? What are you like? What's your goal? Is you trying to push us out or what? And I think a lot. I mean, this is their home, so nobody want to be pushed out of their home. But if they see, I mean, myself, I've only been here for 7 years. Like, I feel like I've been here for 20, especially with the work that we've been doing and stuff. But I think a lot of people see like what we're doing and the work that we have done just with youth and families. To try to make things better, not keep things the same or go backwards. But so that's more exciting because you say, all right, you in my home now, but now I see, all right, you changing the drapes? I don't like that right. But okay, they starting to fit. Oh, you just brought a new countertop in, it's, so now we really starting to integrate, and then bring different people together to see, damn, we really ain't that different. We grew up in different places. Like you said, you grew up in Chicago. We all grew up different places, but kind of damn near the same, if you're being honest,
Absolutely.
So, and our experiences is what was, I believe, needed, for that change to happen here in Duluth. So I think that's dope. So what did you study in college? And then I don't even know officially what like your title is. Like, what do you? I just be seeing you places, and I see you at Chamber of Commerce all the time. So I'm like, he do something while I just don't know. So tell me that career path to where you are.
Sure. So when I first got to UW Spirit, of course, like a lot of people, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So you start doing the generals, and at that time, I started just questioning life as you're supposed to at that that age. So I got kind of more drawn into politics and communication, and that's largely what I still do 20 30 years later. But so I wound up getting a broad field social studies degree in political science and communication, and that's a long story, but like kind of where I envisioned it going was like I didn't understand as an 18 19-year-old kid, like how could my mom work 2 or 3 jobs and still not be able to afford food on the table? Like I just didn't get the social economics of that. So that, and I still do a little bit, but it feels like more and more as I, especially as I was younger, I thought, something's not quite right with our government. If people can work their asses off and not be able to provide for their kids, right? So I mean, that's still the case, and I still do believe the government, is a part of that solution. But I think as I got older, I realized that we can't just wait for the government to provide or fix those issues.
It's like waiting for Jesus at church.
You got it. Exactly.
You got to do something.
Right.
So,
so I got involved with politics that way. As a 17-year-old, I was working for a U.S. senator in Wisconsin. So I wound up doing that for a while, and I enjoyed that work. I worked for a couple of senators, a couple of members of Congress. I wound up working for Mayor Ness here, which and I loved that job. I was 4 years working for him in the city, which I loved. And so I kind of saw it from that angle where, and the same thing like the military. I was halfway through college. It was 2001, obviously, when 9/11 happened, and then I thought, I kind of had an idea what I wanted to do. I actually lived out in New York for about a year, working in the business world, and I was actually pretty good at it as a 19, 20-year-old. And I thought that's something I could do. And as cheesy as it might sound, the draw back to this area was I felt kind of a renewed sense of confidence. Like, I know I can do marketing and business and sales, but that's not necessarily what I want to do if I feel like I can't just make some kind of positive contribution, right? So I wanted to, that's why I came back to Duluth and got more involved with nonprofits and stuff like that. So long answer to your question, but I took the more kind of government, political science route. And I think sometimes people will hear that and think, oh, you want to run for office. And there was a time when I probably did. And it's nothing personal, but I don't necessarily see that as where the solutions are now. And that's, especially having worked on the federal level, I hope that I'm wrong, or I hope that at some point it changes. But I remember staffing Congressman Jim Oberstar as a concrete example. And that was at a time when things were just starting to change. And President Obama was president. And there was a lot of tension around Obamacare and a lot of pushback. And I remember Congressman Oberstar saying this is going to change things, and it's going to get government won't be kind of as the answer going forward, and other people will have to rise up and do things. And I mean, he was, as always, he was right. So you just notice a major change in politics then. Not to get too political, but it's not even about parties. But it used to be about more solution based. And I know it's tacky to say it, but like the reality is it's gotten so damn partisan and so personal now. And I just remember like even just working for the senator, staffing like the Minnesota State Fair, and it was prior to that stuff, it was always like, I disagree with you, you're a piece of X, whatever. And it was kind of funny and you chum around. But then all of a sudden that division started right around that time, and it was like, I disagree with you and I want to, kill you type thing. It was like, seriously, it was a huge division. Something happened right around that time. And that's when I realized more and more like, thank goodness for the people who are more interested in that, are probably better than I'll be at that kind of world. That's an important world, and nothing against it, but that wasn't really where my heart was anymore. So I got more involved. So I went from working at the federal level to working at the city level, and I was really fortunate to know Don Ness, and he took a chance on me and hired me in a new position. And I just think that we made a good team, not just he and I, but the whole team that we had at City Hall. And that's when we had things like the flood happen, and we really were starting to see some positive growth at the time too. So it was kind of reinvigorating for my career, if you will. Just because I kind of found my skill set, but I also kind of knew this was more where I felt I could have an impact, if that makes sense.
And that's interesting, because I ran for, me and Joe, we ran for city council, and I was young. I'm still young, but like, I think young in the sense of I didn't understand that political world. One of my majors is political science. And in my mind, I thought, if I get to this level, I can make a change.
Exactly, you got it. Yep.
Then when I really start seeing kind of how cold and blind patriotism was, it's wild, because in my mind I sit in rooms and you hear people talk, and I'll have a one-on-one or a two-on-one with somebody, and no, we just talked about something, and then when you get around the groups, that whole thing switch up, and I'm like, wait a minute, like that ain't what you just said. You know what I mean? And everybody who know me, and same with Trump, we real as hell. Like it don't matter. I'm not a size guy. I'm middle. There's things for both sides. I love. There's things for both I hate. That's why I don't really. I'm not a CNN or Fox guy. I don't do that. You know what I mean? But I realized that some of these people that sit in these chairs, and no disrespect to, I got a lot of friends in politics for sure. You know, high level like you. It's more of, I realized that the real work was down here. That's right. And we were really making that change. And if we wanted these people to lobby for us and create laws and legislation to affect us, we got to do the work first, and then bring that to them and say, here's what we're doing. Here's data. Here's proof. Here's whatever you need to say, like, all right, we know what's going on the ground. Because so many times you get, like I said, people from the top, sometimes they want to make laws for this level because they think, and sometimes it ain't even bad intention. They just think, hey, it worked for my family, it worked for us. But it's like, that's not going to work for the inner city.
That's usually in any field.
No matter what,
field, basketball, like whatever it goes, the people who get at the top usually get a disconnect.
For sure.
For those people at the bottom.
And one of my friends, he was a sniper in the Army. And he said, the top is only good for what I do. He said, because I can see everything, but he said, in reality, I really don't know. I'm only looking for a target. He said, I don't know what conversations they having. I don't know who their families are. And I never heard it that way. He said, so if you looking to target an individual, oh yeah, he said, climb that mountain. But if you trying to make change and really meet the individual, go in the valley. And I was like, what's that? I said, you ate that up. I'm taking that. Look, shout out to Ryan, man. Shout out to Ryan. He know who I'm talking to. Yeah, you know, he classified. I can't put all this stuff out.
But it takes everyone, right? You said it better than I did. I am still involved with politics. So what I do often, to answer your question about my job, one of my jobs now, and it has been when I work for the city and other places, is to work with the city and the state and the federal level and to kind of help advocate for our area, go down, ask for money, and because we want to put it where it can have the best use, right? So politics is a super important part of that. I just felt exactly what you just said. Like, I could probably use my skill set and my passions better at kind of doing an advocacy work instead of all just assuming that maybe I'll run for Congress again someday or something like that, right? Where it just feels like, no disrespect to anyone, but I don't know that there's that much happening in Congress that can have an immediate impact on our region right now.
I get assassinated. I'm gonna tell you right now. They killed me. There's no way in hell I could sit in those rooms and listen to some of the stuff that people say or discuss about just especially the group that we work with, or marginalize people so much, that we are nothing but a vote or nothing but a way to elevate themselves. It's like, man, I go to jail real quick.
But so quickly on the when I worked for the city, I got to do the policy and communications, and that's where we were seeing some for the first time in a while, we were really seeing some growth in the city, and that was encouraging because, in my opinion, and I'm biased, of course, but I mean this sincerely, I felt like it was being done right, and not just because of Don, or he'd be the first one to say that he led the charge, but it was the council, it was our state representatives, and we were investing in a wide variety of places throughout the city, including youth programming and all those things too. So I felt really good about that. And then just through life, things change, and the pandemic happened, and all that kind of got sidetracked a little bit. But it feels like we're getting back to that now. So the role that I'm in now with the Chamber of Commerce isn't that much different than what I did with the city. In between that, I was in college administration for almost a decade. Most recently at Lake Superior College for about 6 years as their vice president. And very similar, where even though it was a smaller scale, like I saw myself in a lot of those kids, frankly, because they were getting a scholarship. Otherwise, they might not have been able to afford to go to school. So that was just a personal passion of mine. So. But those are, like you said, those are probably a lot of the same kind of kids that you see and I see, that sometimes it's just that little help out that gets them, all of a sudden they're going to be far more successful than we'll probably be in 20, 30 years.
And that's the goal.
If we're doing our jobs right. Exactly.
Like one thing we say, I wish jobs like what we do didn't have to exist.
Right.
And I'm always operate as if I'm trying to end this. And at the same time, I also know that the inner city going to be the inner city in 50 years. There are some things that's not going to change because we just no matter how much work we put in, we don't have that power. But that don't mean like I'm not going to attack these individuals and groups with the goal of changing this as best we can. So I think that's cool. So for you being, where you are now, what do you see like just for the city of Duluth, personally, what are some of the things that you see are kind of still needed? How do you feel that we're moving, or do you feel we're moving towards those right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I generally feel optimistic about the direction of the city, but also acknowledging we have challenges, of course, right? So in my role with the chamber, one of the charges that I see me and our team having is, we can make some of those larger issue impacts, if you will, So if things are good for the business community, so let me back up, sorry. So at the core of our work is our members. We're a member-based organization. So our main charge is to support the business community in Duluth, and that's a good thing. If we do our jobs right, then all businesses are being successful. There's jobs for people, there's economic progress, all those things too. So I think there's, like in everything in life, there's perceptions of what a chamber is, or who, all that kind of stuff too. And I think all that's changed, like a lot of things in the world, like you were talking about basketball or whatever, like all that stuff's changed, especially when you it just evolve as a community, but also as an organization. So at the core, ultimately, we're still supporting local businesses in the business community. Bigger picture, a big part of my role is kind of the policy guy for the chamber and the foundation guy at the chamber, is to help bring in some revenue from the city, from the state, from the federal government to help make some of these organizations even more successful, support our members, support our businesses, kind of really kind of advocate for that continued economic progress so that more people can be successful. So you'll see developments in Gary New Duluth as well, and Lakeside, and everywhere in between up the hill. So our job is to help kind of foster that, support that, so that we can continue to grow our tax base, so people can have jobs, that we can keep revenue in, so that others can do their jobs even better, and then so we're more successful. So to answer your question, it feels like we're in my opinion, we're making good progress, but there's more we can do. So we have industries that are doing pretty well. Aviation's been doing great. Healthcare's doing pretty well. Yeah, you still see some of the mom and pop places struggle a little bit just because of the economic challenges. So we have to do all we can to support them all across the city, but also just to kind of prepare us for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that's what we always have to be thinking about. So at this point, to answer your question, our biggest challenge is honestly housing. And I know everyone's saying it right now, but that's it, right? So we can't grow as a community.
Housing in the sense of we don't have enough.
We don't have enough, especially affordable.
Single family.
Yeah, exactly. And there are things we can do, and it's sometimes you hear the doomsdayers and they say they can't. You're running out of space, and that's not true. This can be a hard place to build. It's certainly it's a difficult environment to develop right now, just given the economics of it right now. But that'll eventually get better, I hope, right? But until then, we can be working on some of the policies that'll make it more. Easy is not the word, but kind of more smooth and transparent for developers. And that's where a big part of my job is just supporting those who are already currently or willing to or wanting to invest in this community. So we can't have housing unless some individual, some developer, local or from out of town, are coming in saying, I believe in Duluth. I want to invest in Duluth. I want to build a housing project in Duluth. I want to start a new business in Duluth. So it was fun driving out here and seeing the progress on the Amazon distribution side as an example, right? That's just one of many examples where that's a major global corporation that is now looking at Duluth and saying, I believe in that economy enough where I want to build that. So now we have got to backfill the houses and have workers and all that stuff too. So, shout out to those who are investing and have been investing in Duluth. And that's a lot of our members and a lot of our friends. And, just I'm thinking the last almost 2 years I've been in this job, we've done a number of ribbon cuttings with developers like Brian Forcier of Titanium Partners and Sandy Hoff and all the, and that's, this community doesn't work without those people taking a chance, taking a risk. And so it's our job to help make that as possible as it can be. And what I mean by that is like sometimes it's not, there's so many different levels to it, but like just at the basic city level, you probably heard a lot about like permitting reform. And it's not a knock on anybody. It's just that sometimes our systems get out of date and things change and the world changes. And we have to adjust accordingly.
It takes so long.
So we don't want to cut corners. We don't want to shortchange anybody. We just want to make sure that the goals are clear for a developer to come in and say, if I do X, Y, and Z, then I'll get approved and then I can proceed with my project, right? What sometimes happens in communities this size is that things will start moving along, but then somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody will show up and complain about something, because a little bit of that NIMBYism. Sometimes there's legitimacy to it, sometimes there's not. But there's always that kind of over adjustment to, oh, I don't. That person was my kid's music teacher or whatever. Right? So we just want to have that clarity in the process. So I mean, not to get too much into the weeds of that, but that's we're at that stage now, to answer your question, as a community where we are seeing some growth. We are seeing economic growth. We're seeing a little bit of population growth, and I feel like we can do more there to foster more of that.
Definitely.
But that sounds easy, and it's not, because that's housing, that's jobs, that's healthcare, that's childcare, it's all those issues. So we're trying to address all those issues.
Yeah. For you, and I know you hit it a little bit. How old are you?
43.
43. Are you still young? So for you, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? Do you? And I know you can't see that far out, like, you know, kind of what you're doing right now, but what do you want to do just for Dan in the next 10 years? Where do you see yourself? You know, I'm guessing still in politics, maybe, or what branch, or, you know, what sector or what?
Yeah, it's. Yeah, not to be coy, but I don't know is the honest answer. I think it's going to sound cheesy, but the truth is the most important thing to me is to be a good dad, right? So that's kind of priority number one right now. So we've got a senior in high school, and then we've got a 7-year-old son, and that's, you know, with all due respect to everybody else who's in my life, and I love a lot of people, but that's number one priority. Right? So make sure that kid is taken care of. He needs me, and I need him just as much. So I think that's kind of priority number one. To be a good dad, to be a good husband, but also to continue whatever that path is. And I'm not to be coy about it, but I don't know what that'll be, to be honest with you, because 5-10 years ago, I didn't necessarily expect to ever work for the Chamber of Commerce. I didn't. I just knew that I kind of fell into a couple of these past careers, and I really, really enjoyed them. So that's kind of led to different things. And, you know, I don't even want to venture to guess, because I don't know what that organization will be, or kind of what that stuff. But I know that the most important thing to me is to keep going somewhere I can have an impact and feeling like we're making progress. Definitely. So whatever that is, I'll figure that out. But at least for the next couple of years, I hope to stay in this role to do this kind of work, because it feels like, to me at least, it feels like we're at this pivotal point as a community where, you know, again, things are going well, but it's still relatively new progress, and that can easily turn in a dime if we don't keep at it, right? So just because things are starting to turn around a little bit, like, we got to keep the foot on the gas, and we have to be thinking 5 or 10 years out, not so much as individuals, but really as a community. So that's my honest answer.
No, and that's fair. I'll tell you, I think about it too, and I actually somebody asked me the other day, like, you know, what do you want to do 5-10 years? And I said, well, the easy answer is community, you know, and I know for a fact I'll always be doing some type of community work. I think as I get older and become less relevant to the youth, you know, I'll have to start focusing more on just like parents, or even, you know, venture back into that political world to just see, is there a place for me now to navigate change from where I was,
right?
You know, and that's right now it's just ignorance.
I was gonna say, but a large part of that is just game.
That's all, and knowledge, you know, and that's why I enjoy, like, you know, having someone like you on, because I learn a lot. And I mean, you already said a lot of things that our mind processes don't go through. We just think, oh, A and B should get you to Z. Nah, I really don't. You got to hit all 26 letters before you, and even then, you might got to start over. You know what I mean? You got to, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot to, I think, just still figure out from where we are, where you are, and a lot that we still want to meet on and figure out. Okay, we've been doing what we're doing for 10, 15 years. Right. How can we start to partner, you know, with entities like what you do, and get more in that political world to start lobbying more for people. And, you know, sometimes, you know, a lot of people ask, you know, the other day, somebody said, what do you need right now outside of money? And it was a great question because you're like, you know, most times our ask is that just because, you know, we get more kids in programs, you know, we're growing. I mean, we went from, when I first started, we had 12 kids, running 80 right now. Wow. You know what I mean? Wow. So it's wild. But sometimes I don't know how to answer that. It's because, you know, and it's pure of like, I don't even know how to get those other things except for money. I'm a great fundraiser. You know, I'm good with connecting people. You know, and I'm good with networking and things like that, you know, especially with entities that can support. but what does other support look like?
Right.
You know, we know what we know how to do, but
Right.
we don't know what we don't know. You know, so.
And that's why it's tough for me to say where I'll be in 5 or 10 years as far as an organization, because if you had asked me 10 years ago, I was working for a member of Congress, and I thought, you know, like kind of what you were saying, from the top down, maybe you can help influence that. And then I just felt like the world shifted, and that just wasn't going to be the case anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so that's when I got more involved with local politics.
Definitely.
And that kind of, so I was an appointed member for Mayor Ness, and when he announced he wasn't going to run, that basically meant I was out of a job and I had to look for something else. And it was a good opportunity because that's where I went to my alma mater, UW Superior, briefly. That led me to Lake Superior College. But then during the pandemic, I mean, to your point, like I just felt like the college was doing pretty well, actually, as a whole. I'm proud of that. We had a great team. But the downtown and part of our community just weren't doing as well as I knew they could be and should be. And that wasn't just Duluth, that was the whole world. That was the pandemic, right? But then I honestly, I felt almost guilty about that because like things are going pretty good in my little small world here in the college. But like, I don't know, we saw some great progress downtown. We saw some great progress, and that's not a knock on anybody. It's just that was the world, right? So then I wanted to get more involved on a bigger scale, and that's why I left my job at LSC and went to the chamber because I felt like the chamber could have a bigger role. That'll probably change in a few years or whatever, and that's okay. So I don't know what that organization is, but I think you almost have to be open to that and just kind of let life take you where you need it or want it, you know. So I don't know the organization, but at the same time, I'd hope that as we continue to make progress, and hopefully we will continue to make progress because we'll work towards it, is like that role of the chamber, the city, or the organization, whatever, that'll evolve over time. So we just have to be open to it. If that makes sense.
Definitely, yeah. Oh man, I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation, and it's one thing I learned is like our mission is very much the same. Just it's just and it's the city, you know, and the community, the people we serve. We may do it at different angles. You know, you may do it economically. You know, we may do it just you know. More community boots on the ground, you know, but that goal is still the same, you know, and a lot of people don't recognize that because, like you said, you hear a lot of people say, well, they not out on the street and they not doing this, and that ain't fair. Like, I don't know what they having that meeting about. That could be something that's going to affect us in a positive way, you know, and having conversations like this makes that more prevalent to people, you know, and more eye-open to say, all right, this ain't just somebody that sit in the office or you know speak on the mic. They really trying to lobby and advocate for every part of the community. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
I do too. It's been I wanted to commend you just because your story, just from single parent household in Chicago, it's mad relatable to a bunch of everybody that's damn near I know at the center and just in my life in general. So just knowing that story from there to now and seeing where you are, and then also pivoting from your job, like that takes a lot of like balls. Like people don't do that.
Or stupidity, I don't know.
Either way, you know.
No, but I appreciate that. But honestly, like to your point, like I'm not complaining or bragging. It's just everyone's got that story, right? So that's an important part of who you are.
Exactly.
And to exactly like you said, you know, I don't care if you came from a single family or, you know, whatever the case, a single parent family, or you had a great life. Ultimately, we all have our own challenges, our own stories and stuff like that. So I appreciate the chance to be on here to talk about that. I appreciate the work that you guys do because it matters. So I appreciate
it. Heck yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks again, Dan. And we'll see y'all soon with a new guest. We out of here.